Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We got a slammed 2 hours with superstars galore, including Tristan Thompson going to hang out with us. I'm just name dropping out of the gates. But we start with some NFL news and notes because, Caroline, I think fans everywhere just sat there and said, you've got to be kidding me, when they saw the footage of one Patrick Mahomes out there in OTAs looking good. Patrick Mahomes out there gliding around the field. Patrick Mahomes out throwing the football like there's nothing wrong. Patrick Mahomes proving yet again he's superhuman. And it has me wondering, are we ready to buy back in? Or we're all sitting here, it's like we're waiting for that opportunity. But knowing that we're seeing Mahomes just months removed from what looked like was going to be at least the lost beginning portion of this season with the ACL injury, instead, all of a sudden, we're now seeing him in OTAs. Are you buying the Chiefs and Mahomes are going to start the season A-okay?
That is what we do during OTAs, isn't it? You know, quarterback goes out there, no pads on, wearing shorts, throws one football, and all of a sudden it's like, I think this team could win the Super Bowl. And it's like, no, that's the Cleveland Browns. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. Sorry, Mike Goldfarb. I never bought out of the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you are completely and totally bought out of the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that's a gross overreaction to one down year. And there are several reasons to explain why the Chiefs had a down year. One, Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. That's the Superman of all supermen in the NFL. They had a rotating cast of pass catchers, and let's be honest, the pass catchers that were available weren't necessarily the most thrilling or razzly-dazzly pass catchers out there. Like when you've got Hollywood Brown as your most consistent and most available pass catcher, no disrespect to Hollywood Brown, but he's no Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. The defense also was not good enough. That defense was straight up bad. So you look at the things that the Chiefs have done in the offseason, addressing defense with their top pick in the NFL draft. I know Patrick Mahomes coming back and getting healthy, having the overall kick in the butt of having a season where you miss out on the postseason after you've gone on dynastic runs. Look, I don't think the Chiefs are going to all of a sudden just walk to the Super Bowl just because Patrick Mahomes looks good in OTAs. But I also don't think that the Chiefs are headed for the next 5 to 10 years of just total and complete mediocrity and missing out on the postseason. Because I think that Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. I think that Andy Reid is still Andy Reid. And while last season showed us those two alone are not good enough to will you to a Super Bowl, when you put the right pieces around those two, when you have pass catchers that are available and healthy, you know, when you have a defense that looks at least should be upgraded from last season, like, yeah, I think the Chiefs should find themselves back in the postseason. I'm not going to all of a sudden act like the magic of one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen play the sport of football is just over and done with after one down year.
Ooh, I am. Look, and this, let me just loudly, before anybody comes at me in my mentions, let me just
You're gonna
loudly
crumple up
tell
Patrick
the world.
Mahomes and throw him in the trash?
No, I'm going to crumple up the Chiefs and throw them in the trash. And look, the Chiefs are better than the Raiders. I want to say that loudly because whenever I say anything anti-Chiefs, people are like, well, you're a Raiders fan. Look, I think the Chiefs have been absolutely a wonder for the NFL, and I think they're absolutely incredible, and they're better than the Raiders. So now that I've said that, they're the third best team in their own division this year. I struggle to find a way to get them into the playoffs because the rest of the AFC has taken bigger steps forward, on top of the fact that, frankly, the Chiefs were 6-8 when Mahomes went down. He didn't go down early in the season. They were 6-8 on their way to a 6-11 season. They were 6-8 and nothing looked easy. And I feel like what's happened over the last couple of years, I'm the guy that sat here on Yahoo over and over and over again saying, look, I'm out on the Chiefs when they stopped making miracles happen. Well, they've stopped making miracles happen. For several years, it was like a scratch-off lottery ticket. You can't explain it. You couldn't explain why the Chiefs were so good. But by God, every single year, they got the best coach, they got the best defensive coordinator, they got the best quarterback. That's been enough over and over and over again. The problem is I think the rest of the AFC's gotten better, and the Chiefs haven't in that process. Because you mentioned some of the failings they had last year. Those failings still exist. Their starting wide receivers right now are Tyquan Thornton, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice, who's in jail. So I'm looking across the board thinking it didn't get better for them in the wide receiver room. They didn't solve the wide receiver room. They just did what they always do, which is look around and say, well, when you've got a coach as brilliant as Andy Reid and the quarterback as great as Patrick Mahomes, It'll be fine. Will it? I don't know. They were 6-8 last year when he went down with injury, and now they're taking on a Denver team that far exceeded all of our expectations, and a Chargers team that frankly never gets healthy. But if they do, this is a Chargers team coming off the playoffs. It's way easier for me to give benefit of the doubt to Denver and almost called them San Diego and the Chargers than it is for me to give benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs. All three staggeringly better than my favorite football team. I'm saying that before you at me. I understand the Raiders suck, but at the end of the day, I don't believe the Chiefs have taken the steps forward that they need to take to suddenly find themselves as a 10-win team next year.
Why do the Chargers get a benefit of the doubt that the Chiefs don't? The Chargers made the playoffs last year. They put up 3 points against New England and got their butts absolutely clobbered. They gave up 16 points and lost by double digits. I mean, you mentioned the pass catchers in Kansas City, and that is a problem. And I think that is something the Chiefs absolutely positively have to address, especially now since we're lingering around that June 1st date. But what did the Chargers do? Pass catchers were a problem for them last year as well. And when you look at the Chargers' availability at wide receiver, what, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, Trey Harris? That's what you're giving a guy that you view as the future of your franchise and a franchise cornerstone in Justin Herbert? Look, I like Justin Herbert. I do. But what has Justin Herbert done to receive and deserve this benefit of the doubt? I know. The offensive line was totally and completely banged up last year for the Chargers, and that derailed their season. Why am I going to give them the benefit of the doubt that all of a sudden that's going to be fixed and that's going to be okay? Like, I think if anybody deserves benefit of the doubt, it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year? Probably wouldn't put my money on it. But they've been a pretty safe bet for a majority of the last, 5 to 8 years? So I am not willing to say that the Chargers are a better football team or are better positioned to make a run in the postseason than the Chiefs are today on May 28th. Because the Chargers roster has some very clear and obvious deficiencies, as does the Chiefs. But if we're talking about benefit of the doubt, the Chiefs get that.
The Chargers don't get a lot of benefit of the doubt to the playoffs. But look at last year. Denver won 14 games. The Chargers won 11 games. The Chiefs won 6. So if I believe that the Chiefs are going to leapfrog the Chargers, I got to get the Chiefs at least 5 games better and the Chargers a couple of games worse. You're right. The Chargers suck in the playoffs. I don't give them any benefit of the doubt in the playoffs, but we're talking about even getting to the playoffs. And I got to find 5 more wins for this. I love Kenneth Walker as much as anybody. I feel like I'm the president of the Kenneth Walker street team. Have been all the way back to when he was saving Mel Tucker's job at Michigan State. I love Kenneth Walker. I don't think Kenneth Walker is a +5 in the win category for Kansas City. And even if you say, well, they lost the last 3 games because they didn't have Mahomes, the wheels were already falling off at that point. I think they've just year in and year out put so much on coach quarterback combo to be the savior. Even if I can get the Chiefs 2 or 3 games better, even if I get the Chiefs 3 games better, that gets them to 9-8. I've got to find a reason that the Chargers are 3 games worse in the regular season to finish behind them. I can't find that. You're right. I give Justin Herbert no credit in the playoffs, and I give him no credit in big games. Somebody make me a highlight rip of the big significant wins in Justin Herbert's career. I'll wait because there are none, right? So I understand we get that benefit of that, but to get the Chiefs to the playoffs, which is what we're talking about here, they've got to suddenly find a way to be better than the teams. They've got to find 5 extra wins, and they've got to find a fall off from the Chiefs. I can't find that. I think it takes 10 wins. So let's say 4 extra wins. I think it takes 10 wins to really plant your seed that we are going to get to the playoffs. I got to get 4 extra wins for Kansas City, and I got to find 2 extra losses for the Chargers that, you're right, suck in the playoffs, but they don't suck in the regular season. And then on top of that, I've got to ask for the downfall of either the Texans or the Jags. Maybe that happens. Maybe that doesn't. I've got to ask for the downfall of one of the teams from the AFC East. Like, to find the path to the playoffs, I've got to get Kansas City 4 games better, and I've got to get everybody else at least 2 games worse coming into this season.
The Chiefs lost to the Raiders last year. The Chiefs lost to the Titans last year. Chiefs lost. Look, and I'm not going to act like the Texans are in that same stratosphere of suck as those other 2 teams were last year. But if we're talking about Patrick Mahomes versus CJ Stroud, especially the CJ Stroud that we saw last year, I'm taking I'm taking Patrick Mahomes 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. I think anybody who watched any football last year would agree with me on that. They lost on the
I mean,
road
but
at Jacksonville
wait.
before the Jags even really found their footing late in the season. You would tell me you would take CJ Stroud over Patrick Mahomes.
The Texans went 12-5 last year. 12, like we talk about the Texans like they're a disaster. They went 12-5.
Have we ever seen
the
Patrick
Texans,
Mahomes throw 4 interceptions in a playoff game?
yeah, but we're not talking like in order to be great in the playoffs, you got to get to the playoffs. Like you're right about all of these playoff things.
They've
but
missed the playoffs one time, Fitz. One time.
They've missed. And how did they fix that? Coming into this season, how did they fix that? Like, that's the thing, because the Texans are still going to be able to feast against the Titans. They're still going to be able to feast probably against the Colts, who are going to be without Daniel Jones for how much of the season. So the Texans are still going to be able to pick up easy wins along the way. This is a Chiefs team that's going to have to go through the Chargers. They're going to have to go through the Broncos just to make the playoffs. This is a Chiefs, like, to even get to these playoffs, they take on Seattle this year. That's a tough draw for them. They have to go to Buffalo. They've got at Cincinnati in December, which may or may not be a tough game. We'll see. But they've got tough games on the schedule. Like, this is a Chiefs team that has to get back to the playoffs before they can rely on everybody else melting down in the playoffs. If we're talking about Patrick Mahomes versus anybody else in the playoffs, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. I got to get him there first. And I don't think one Kenneth Walker suddenly miraculously, poof, gets them to the playoffs.
I mean, you're talking about the Chiefs getting to the playoffs. Like, I'll take that bet. Like, you're talking about, can Patrick Mahomes get the Chiefs? Like, sure, you can play great in the playoffs, but can he get his team to the playoffs? Yeah. I don't have it up in front of me. I don't know how many years Patrick Mahomes has gotten the Chiefs to the playoffs when he's taken over as the starter, but I would venture to guess, just based off of memory alone, it was every single year except last year. And look, the Chiefs had a lot of luck in some of those wins along the way on the path to the postseason and even on path to the Super Bowl. Sometimes, the ball just bounced their way. It was, win margins of 1 point or 2 points, overtime wins where they just, got a little bit of luck. Sometimes you do get a little bit of luck. Sometimes the luck swings the other way. How many one-score games did the Chiefs lose last year? So I think of so many years of the Chiefs rubbing a lucky lamp didn't go their way last year. Sometimes that just happens in the National Football League. And look, Travis Kelce looked every single bit of 34, 35 years old. He looked rough at times. Patrick Mahomes clearly did not have enough pieces around him. And Patrick Mahomes is not Superman, okay? He is, as much as we want to say that he is Superman, but there's not just one single player in the NFL that can just do it by themselves. Not even Josh Allen, not even Joe Burrow, not even Lamar Jackson, as much as it feels like it does sometimes. So I think last year, very much so, was a regression to the mean for the Chiefs. The pendulum swung their way one year and it didn't the next. Until we get a big enough sample size of the Chiefs just absolutely falling flat on their faces, which would be another 6-win season this year, missing out on the playoffs again, their offense taking yet another hit like we saw last season, then I'm willing to have more of the conversation of the Chiefs just don't have it anymore. The Chiefs' day in the sun is over. But I'm not going to take 1 year after years and years and years of getting to the AFC Championship game, winning Super Bowls, getting to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to let a long history and a long track record of playing on the biggest stages in the National Football League be overshadowed by one down season.
I never said they were lucky when they were winning close games. I always said that was part of their identity. They had this ability as part of their identity to win close games. I'm just looking at a team that last year lost to Jacksonville with Mahomes. Last year lost to Houston with Mahomes. Last year lost to the Chargers with Mahomes. You start looking across the board, they lost both games to the Chargers. They were swept by the Chargers last year with Mahomes. So as much as we want to make this about Patrick Mahomes, I think this is about the Chiefs finally getting caught by the way that they're constructed. There is some positive news for Kansas City Chiefs fans everywhere, and that is in the form of one of your best players becoming a team owner. Fun little nugget here. Travis Kelce has joined the minority ownership group of the Cleveland Guardians. So Kelce adds MLB owner to his resume. Remember, he is the fun money in his soon-to-be marriage. He is the vacation fund. His soon-to-be wife does much better than he does, but they're using some of their future combined resources. He's from Cleveland. He loves this moment. He takes a minority stake in the Guardians. It's a great story, Caroline.
Oh, must be nice when the one who makes hundreds of millions of dollars is just making the fun little piggy bank money. I love this though, because I love it when ownership groups have representation of people from the city and love the city and grew up rooting for these teams, that they just part of their DNA is from that city. I think that sports ownership has really gone away from that. It's so much private equity, it's so much rich people just wanting to own a team for funsies. But I think the heart of sports is the people who just will live, eat, breathe that team in that city. And you see it there. Travis Kelce wearing that shirt. I'm from Cleveland. He said so much of who I am is because of the city of Cleveland. So to have him who can galvanize the city, who can be an ambassador for the city of Cleveland, now calling shots for the Cleveland Guardians, I love that. I don't love that for Taylor Swift, though. She has to be a Guardians fan. Poor thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least she has to be a Guardians CEO. And it's a reminder to your point, in a private equity world, Taylor Swift would not be even remotely close to one of the wealthiest owners in Major League Baseball, even if she owned the team outright all by herself. So amazing how big these valuations have gotten across the board. All right, we've got plenty more football to come, but coming up, we'll take a look at one of the biggest stories in college football. What's the latest on Brendan Sorsby, and should he be allowed to play? We'll break it down.
Are there any teams that come to mind, whether it's Brooklyn, whether it's Sacramento, or anybody else that you think has good incentive to try to move up in the draft?
If there was a team that I was looking at that had an asset, it's Milwaukee at 10 that might use Giannis to, for example, maybe try to get that fifth pick from the Clippers. That's the only team that I'm looking at right now that I say, okay, I think they've got the juice.
This is a team that is also doing it without some signature players in their rotation. Hunter Green, we have not seen him, but what Terry Francona and his staff are putting together right now, Sal Stewart is a Rookie of the Year candidate. Ellie De La Cruz is an MVP candidate. So, yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are a team that has some staying power in what is a very interesting and potentially compelling National League Central.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you could make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back one position.
Right across the street from where the Giants and the Jets play, we've got professional football indoor. The run up in the left-footed kick is on the ground and picked up by an up man for the Rattlers. It's Ronnie Brown. Brown out across midfield and a great run down the boards to the end zone. Touchdown, Brown! What a start in the IFL Cup! Huge high hop, and he just absolutely had a nose for the end zone down the wall.
Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby was denied reinstatement by the NCAA, sending his eligibility fight to a Texas courtroom. He's seeking a temporary injunction to play in the 2026 season after completing a 35-day rehab program for gambling addiction. Remember, it was found that he gambled on several different things, hundreds of bets, thousands of bets, some of which included an Indiana team that he was on at the time, which has created this discourse. He is suing for a temporary injunction because their argument is essentially it causes irreparable harm if he's not able to step on the field. A courtroom will have to rule on that. Caroline, how do we feel about where we've gotten to now in this situation?
This feels really icky to me, Fitzy, because if I drive drunk, which you should never do, call an Uber, but if I drive drunk and I hurt somebody, is my defense in court going to be, well, if I go to jail for this, then that's going to cause irreparable harm for my career and for, for my reputation. The judge is going to say, I don't care. You broke the law. You made a dumb decision and you did something stupid. You did a crime and you have to do the time. We have precedence with this in the NCAA. It was not that long ago when Hunter Deckers permanently lost his NCAA eligibility after it was found that he was betting on Iowa State games. An Iowa State player was not on the active roster, just as Brennan Sorsby was not on the active roster at Indiana when he was placing bets on Indiana football. But the NCAA didn't care because they said, it is very clearly stated in our rules and in our bylaws. If you bet on college football and you bet on your own team, you will lose your eligibility. That's what Brendan Sorsby did. And he's getting to come back for Texas Tech and make millions of dollars and earn his way and potentially into the NFL draft. And I don't want this kid's life to end because clearly he has a gambling addiction and he's getting treatment for that. And I support that. I think everybody should. But it doesn't change the fact that he broke the rules and we have precedents for that. And if I'm Hunter Deckers, I'm looking around and throwing my hands up and thinking, why was it different for me? Why were the rules for me but not for thee? I think the lack of consistency and the lack of a stronghold that I think that the NCAA has shown here is really embarrassing and potentially incredibly harmful to the future of gambling and the NCAA.
To your point, when you mentioned Deckers, he placed a $15 bet in 2021 on Iowa State to beat Oklahoma State, a game he was on the roster but did not play. That resulted in a full ban. And that's the way it has to be, in my mind. To your point, when we talk about Sorsby, I understand that he is sorry for what he did. His statements have been all very well written and very well thought out and seem very sincere. And I understand that he's gone through rehab to help this issue. That doesn't mean that suddenly you don't have to pay the price for what you've done. To your point, if somebody is pulled over for a DUI and they're an alcoholic, just because they go through rehab, just because they get through AA, doesn't mean suddenly that the traffic incident is taken off their record. I'll use a very specific and real example that many people don't realize in the music industry. The Grammys have a foundation set up. If you have an addiction issue while you are touring in music, if you need to leave your tour, the Grammy Foundation will pay for you to go to rehab. They will make sure you're in rehab, and they'll even pay for the person to come in and replace you on your gig. So if I'm the fiddle player in a band, I have to go to rehab. They'll help the artist I'm playing for make sure that nobody's hurt by it and I'm sent to rehab. That's all a beautiful thing. But here's the key. When I'm out of rehab, that artist doesn't have to hire me back. That artist doesn't have to welcome me back with open arms and say, yes, I'm going to put you back on the tour. In fact, many times they don't. So realistically, what's important here, and this is what we keep saying, everybody says, oh, it's important that Sorsby get help. He's gotten that. He's gone through an addiction program. Now what? This is where action has consequence. Unfortunately for him, they can't, to me, change what the level of consequence is just because this is sad for a kid, just because this feels really like a bummer for him and for anybody else that's involved in gambling. Because once you start the slippery slope of, yeah, but, oh, he's a great kid. Oh, yeah, but he's gone through rehab. Yeah, but it was only this one game here. Once you open up a slippery slope, you've opened up the slippery slope. Part of what you have to have here, I think, are very strict, very black and white. There is no negotiation. Here is the rule. Because if you do anything less than that, you allow for the opportunity of her interpretation in future cases. And now all of a sudden you're sitting here saying, well, this judge feels this way and this judge feels this way. This coach feels this way. This coach feels this way. And then you have inconsistency in punishment. This is very clear to me. The gambling, at the end of the day, is something I don't believe that we need to turn around and suddenly eliminate gambling. But I do believe that when you have somebody that breaks the gambling rules very clearly in black and white on paper, they have to face that punishment. And that punishment needs to be clear and succinct. It is right now. It is clear. So my hope is that a court comes in and acknowledges the punishment as it should be, and everybody steps up and says, hey, I'm sorry this sucks, but you did the wrong thing, and as a result, you have to face the punishment for it.
Playing college football is not a privilege. Or excuse me, it's not a right. It is a privilege. and you get certain privileges taken away from you when it is shown that you are not responsible enough to live up to the expectations or abide by the rules of that privilege. I think Brendan Sorsby is probably a good kid. I don't know him. I don't know much about him. I'm sure he's probably a fine, upstanding citizen. But he did not abide by the rules that you need to abide by in order to have said privilege. So you do not get said privilege anymore. It's very simple. It's like disciplining a toddler. You want to do something, you have to earn the right to do it. It's not that crazy of an abstract thought. And I think one pushback that we've gotten before Fitzy is, well, it was small bets, only a couple of dollars here and there, less than $20 here and there. I don't care, because the rule is not you can bet up to $20 on your own team. It is you cannot bet on your team. So I don't care if it's 1 cent. I don't care if it's $1 million. You broke the rules. Like, if you get pulled over and you say, well, officer, I was only going 10 over. He's going to say, yeah, but you were driving too fast. It's not like there's a threshold that you can drive 10 above the speed limit, but 11 is all of a sudden a problem. It is incredibly black and white. There are some parts of the NCAA rules and the law that are very gray. This is black and white. You can either not do it or do it and lose your eligibility. So I think that the NCAA, which is an entity that has already been diluted so much in the NIL era, so many times I've looked around and I've thought, what even is the point of the NCAA? What do they even do anymore? What kind of power do they even have? The very small amount of power that they still have in college athletics is situations like this. And so what the NCAA is doing is only delegitimizing themselves even more than the NIL and transfer portal era already has. Now, I'm not here to say, the NCAA needs more integrity, because the NCAA, I think, is a joke. I would always want things to have more integrity, but I think the NCAA at this point is just a total and complete joke. They are making themselves look, I think, so incredibly silly. They are damaging college football by allowing Brendan Sorsby to continue to play.
And I continue to say consistently on the record here, my brother served 7 years for possession with the intent to distribute. I understand ripping someone's life away. I understand action consequence better than most people that ever talk about these things. So I have to say that because Twitter always responds to these sorts of takes. The one thing I'll remind you is that, like it or not, freedom of speech is legal in this country. And some of the same people right now that are saying you can't rip this young man's life away are the same people that would be asking for his life to be ripped away if he said anything on camera that didn't agree with their political views. So it's wild to me that in a world where people want to try and find a reason to rip away opportunity every time somebody speaks out on views opposite of their own, now they're turning around when an actual rule in black and white has been violently broken and turn around and say, yeah, but you can't rip this kid's life away. It just makes no sense to me. This is cut and dry. He shouldn't be allowed to play. We'll continue to keep you updated on whatever comes next in this ruling. But coming up next, Tom Haberstroh has finally figured out all of the math on SGA, and it's staggering. We'll talk about it next.
Rubido's going to have to stand in there. He's going to take a lot of big hits because they're going to give up pressure.
Fake handoff from the three, launches, got a man deep, caught, touchdown, New Mexico, Damon Street with the answer.
Let's watch, there's Rubidoux gets drilled and just, poorly timed on the defensive play by or Decius. Decius jumps and the ball's not even there yet, but a great play though for New Mexico.
The UFC has just given me so much. And I've met so many great fans around the world, different states and things like that. And I'm just blessed. And like I said, I'm glass half full all the time. Even when things are not going my way, I find a way to look at the bright side. I'm just happy to be here, man. And one fight at a time, when it's all said and done, I would love to have my last dance with the UFC.
What's that like for you as a weapon to see different coaches come in and figure out how to best utilize those weapons? What's that been like for you?
It's been great, just working for guys like that now under Matt. They're just guys that, you want to play for. You get to see, how all of these great minds think. it's allowing me to learn. It's like keeping me on my toes and allowing me to just develop as a football player mentally.
Felix Harper, 7 of 11 in the first half. The efficiency has been the name of the game for him so far this season. Handoff left side, down the near boards, open space, and JT Stokes in for the touchdown for Fishers. And JT Stokes get a carry off the left side on the first play from scrimmage in the second half and houses it.
For the second time in these playoffs, Victor Wembanyama gets a warning for the league, this time violating media access rules after bypassing post-game media obligations during the Spurs Game 5 loss to OKC. The league giving out warnings like Oprah gives out cars if it's Wemby. So what do we make of it at this point? We've seen a little bit of heat avoided for Wemby. Is it special treatment? We're going to figure that out with Tom Haberstroh, who joins us right now. Tom, you can check out a new episode of The Big Number coming out today. Also, Tom's going to be live with KOC tonight after the game. You are all over yacht, starting early, ending late. So what do we make of it? Is it special treatment for Wemby?
Yeah, I think this is a case where Victor Wembanyama has been so good with the media this season. The Professional Basketball Writers Association gave him the Magic Johnson Award for the best player interview in the NBA, meaning he's been such a good relationship with media, available, giving thoughtful answers. And yet here in this moment, he has ducked the media in the biggest game of his career on the road, losing Game 5. And I do think that this is preferential treatment, but understandably, Victor Wembanyama is the face of the future for the NBA and a door to the global market. And the NBA has decided that all of that goodwill throughout the season that has been rewarded by us, the media, has considered Victor Wembanyama, as voted by the Writers Union, to be exceptionally good and available with the media. Now, I will say this, guys. Jimmy Butler wants his refund back. Jimmy Butler in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics ducked the media in Game 3, and the NBA nailed him with a $25,000 fine for not speaking to the media. So I can understand if Jimmy Butler's like, hey, I want that $25K back, because Victor Wembanyama not only ducked the media, he did it in the Western Conference Finals after a loss. Jimmy Butler, when he ducked the media, it was after a 40-point win. So it's not like the media was clamoring, knocking down on the door of Jimmy Butler to hear what he had to say after an embarrassing loss. This is a different circumstance, and Victor Wembanyama is leaning on the fact that he has been very good with the media and having long answers and having thoughtful answers. But this, in conjunction with him not getting a fine, an additional fine for the elbow in this postseason, we are seeing that Victor Wembanyama is skating on this. And I can understand why, but I can also understand why Thunder fans are livid today.
Because I'm sure Thunder fans are livid, but I'm sure Spurs fans are out here saying, well, what about the flopping fines for SGA? I mean, that's been the narrative surrounding OKC really for majority of the season. You recently tracked how many times the big-time ball handlers have been falling down in the postseason. Are the SGA flopping criticisms fair, or are they totally blown out of proportion?
Well, they're fair to the extent, Caroline, that he falls more than any other star in the league. Now, I tracked this for Yahoo Sports on Friday, because on Thursday, I went on Kevin O'Connor's show and I said, look, all the complaints that he's flopping on every single shot are unfounded. There's lots of social media around this. And I looked at the numbers and I hand charted everything for his game right before that on Wednesday night. And it wasn't the case that he was flopping on every time. It wasn't the case that he was falling on the majority of his shots, much less on all of his shots. But then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to track every single shot that he has taken in this postseason. And not only that, all the shooting fouls that he's drawn that aren't counted as field goal attempts, but are shots, essentially. And what we found was in that charting that he not only fell more than Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell and James Harden and Victor Wembanyama. I tracked 4 other players to have proper context here for when I was seeing so many of these falls for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Is it high? Is it low? And it turns out it was exceptionally high. And it makes sense because it works. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander now has 48 falls this postseason on his shots, including the shooting fouls that he's drawn. That's more than Victor Wembanyama and Jalen Brunson combined this postseason run. So when you look at, is he flopping? Well, I'm not saying he's flopping more than everybody else because that's a subjective thing, right? What I want to make clear is that he is falling more than anybody else. And so if you're a Thunder fan, I can understand why that is not the most fun storyline to have to deal with, but these are facts. It's objective. And this is something that NBA teams have been talking about internally about how often he falls and how often he is being rewarded with referee whistles. And that is the second follow-up I did, Caroline. I looked at, of the portion of those falls, how many of those are getting foul calls? And what we find is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets a higher proportion of foul calls on his falls than any of those other guys I mentioned when we talk about Jalen Brunson, James Harden, and Donovan Mitchell. They do not get rewarded with a whistle nearly as much as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who gets 50% of those falls ending up with a foul call. And for Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, and James Harden, that number's around 20%. So he's getting twice the rate of those foul calls on those when he hits the deck. So I think that's what people are upset about, is that not only is he falling, but he's getting rewarded for those. And to me, if I'm Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I continue to do it because I'm getting more shots at the free throw line. I'm getting rewarded with those. Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, they're getting more fouls against them, getting in foul trouble quicker. And if the NBA is not giving them a fine, then I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is right to do this. Exploit the loopholes. And if the referees and the NBA aren't going to do anything about it, then just keep doing it. So Thunder fans who are very upset with me that I did this analysis and tracked it, I would say to them, he's getting away with this and it's helping him be more efficient on the floor. So as long as the NBA does not hit him with a fine, which they can, they have not done that since 2020 in the playoffs. They have not issued a flopping fine in the playoffs since 2020. I don't think they're going to do that here, but I do think what the San Antonio Spurs would like to see is he not get rewarded with the foul calls, rewarded with the charity stripe trips as a result of those falls.
I guess my only, I don't want to say pushback, but follow up on this, Tom, is like, I remember the Reggie Miller kick, right? We all remember the Reggie Miller kick. He kicked, he got the foul, and then eventually the NBA changed the rules. These refs, they look at it. The league talks to these refs. When you talk to players, they'll tell you the league talks to refs every single game. If the league really had a problem with it, wouldn't they or couldn't they have already called the refs and say, hey, stop calling on these flops. Be more careful in here. If he was doing something truly wrong in the eyes of the league, couldn't they have already stopped it simply by asking the refs to call the game differently?
For sure. But it's a lot easier said than done. You know, in the heat of the moment, I think for the referees, they're trying to call a fair game. And when there is contact, there was a particular play in Game 5 in which he drove against Devin Vassell, and he was hit in his midsection and his hands, and he went down in a heap. And when you see that, you're going to have the instinct to call a foul because he was knocked off balance. And the thing is, you can argue, hey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's the reigning 2-time MVP. He's getting hit harder on his drives, and he drives more than any other player left in this postseason. So you can argue, hey, he's just getting hit harder. They're fouling him harder. And also he drives to the basket, gets downhill almost every play on the floor. So you can say, hey, look, the guy is just going to be hit, with a lot more force, and he's going downhill. That's why he's falling so much. But I actually looked at that too. When I looked at the data, Donovan Mitchell has actually had more drives, more penetrations into the paint, according to the NBA player tracking cameras. And yet he has loads fewer falls to the hardwood than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So yes, on a per game basis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander drives more than those other guys. But in aggregate, he should not have nearly as many falls based on the number of drives that he has. So yeah, the NBA can step in and say, hey, you should call fewer fouls or issue an in-game flopping fine. But there's only been one flopping fine this season, and it came back in November 30th against Malik Monk in a game in which the Sacramento Kings played the Memphis Grizzlies. That was as low stakes as it gets. I'd be surprised if they fine Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the highest stakes game of the season.
I want to switch to the East quickly, Tom, because Cavs owner Dan Gilbert said the team is going to make some changes after getting swept out of the Eastern Conference Finals. We know LeBron to the Cavs is going to be one of the biggest storylines this offseason. It gives everybody kind of the warm, fuzzy feelings. Does LeBron to the Cavs make sense?
Oh, for the Cavs, it certainly makes sense. And from the LeBron perspective, of course, it makes sense that maybe this is his final season and he goes back home for his final, his farewell tour. That would be a hallmark moment for LeBron James and also for the Cavs that got swept in embarrassing fashion against the New York Knicks. They certainly need someone with championship experience, not James Harden, not Donovan Mitchell, and not Evan Mobley. And LeBron James certainly fits the bill as the savior. He's done it before back in 2016, and he certainly could do it again with the Cavs because the Cavs have a really interesting summer ahead of them where they've already, reportedly given the vote of confidence to Kenny Atkinson that he will be back for next season. So you ask yourself, well, then what is the big shakeup? Well, I could see a scenario in which they call up the Milwaukee Bucks and say, hey, will Evan Mobley and a first-round pick do it to get Giannis Antetokounmpo? And then you turn around and you say, LeBron, you could come back home for a farewell tour and try to win a championship in the Eastern Conference like you did before with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat and have an easier road now that you got Giannis and you've got Donovan Mitchell in tow with James Harden to kind of hold a lot of those innings in the regular season. And then LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo have won championships before can take the lead in the postseason. So I do think that the Cavs could end this offseason with not just LeBron, but Giannis Antetokounmpo in a trade for Evan Mobley. And I think LeBron James would want to do that if he sees this as his final stop in his long and historic NBA career. So don't sleep on the possibility that the Cavs, I wrote about this in February, the Cavs could end up with both Giannis and LeBron James this summer. It'll take some gymnastics on the cap, but I do think that the Cavs fans can look at that as best case scenario.
Would that be a championship team to you?
Oh, yeah, they would certainly contend, especially when you look at the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a bloodbath in the Western Conference. But if you're LeBron and you're looking at the landscape of the NBA, it's much easier to get to the NBA Finals if you're coming out East rather than going through those two teams. And you're seeing the injuries pile up for both of those rosters. If you're the New York Knicks right now and you're LeBron looking at the future of the Eastern Conference, certainly would rather be in the East than in the West.
No doubt about that. But I was listening to some of LeBron's, postseason press conferences, and he said, it's first time in my career that I haven't just been not the second option, but the third option behind Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. And he talked about how great it was in the postseason to finally be like the go-to guy again. Is LeBron willing to sign up to be maybe not even the third option, but the fourth option on the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Yeah, I think come playoff time, I think he'll be more like a 2 or a 3. Given how much he needs to get through an 82-game season, I think the Lakers setup is pretty ideal, is that you got Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic to carry the weight in the regular season. The problem is the injuries that pile up for both of those guys this season. It was LeBron having to carry the weight. And then come playoff time, no Luka. Half the time Austin Reeves wasn't there, and you're seeing that LeBron had to do this for way more than he signed up for. So for LeBron, I think the math is, look, I'll be a fourth option in the regular season, but come playoff time, when you need a guy to create, get downhill, and get a bucket, I'm your guy. Giannis Antetokounmpo is your guy. And it was very clear throughout this postseason that the Cavs, who finished 8-10, the worst for any conference finalist in NBA history, the Cavs certainly need a stronger, more forceful player than what they had in James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And LeBron fits the bill. So I certainly think in the playoffs, he becomes a 1 or 2 option when he's basically in the regular season, not near that.
All right, so we've talked about SGA flopping. We've talked about LeBron. Let's get the other big theory in from all the fans, and that's the NBA draft lottery. They're going to be televising it. Will this be enough for you, Tom, before we get you out of here? Is this enough for all the fans to put to rest the conspiracy theories that the entire lottery is fixed?
Yeah, I think it's going to be great television. I love the idea of televising the lottery, and I think this is going to be a big win for fans. But let's not get it too ahead of ourselves here. The frozen envelope was televised. That was a lottery that was televised. And when you see, Patrick Ewing going to the New York Knicks, David Stern's first time that they had televised the lottery, there was a wealth of conspiracy theories. The frozen envelope, was there a corner that was bent that allowed David Stern to know which one was the one to pull out of the canister? So I do think that no matter what, if they televise it or not, the conspiracy theories will still be loud and clear, because I know the frozen envelope may be the loudest conspiracy theory on Draft Lotto night, and that was televised too. So I think it's a great thing for fans to be able to watch this and watch it go all the way from 10 to 1. But man, this is the NBA. I don't think you're going to see any of those conspiracy theories quiet down, even if they televise it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, you're 1,000% right. We're going to reach a spot, though, where the lottery gets more views than the actual draft does, because people want to see how it all plays out. You can watch, Tom, a new episode of The Big Number drops later today, and then Tom and KOC live tonight following Game 6. Long day for you, my friend. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us this morning. We appreciate it. You're doing great work.
You got it, guys.
It's great stuff from Tom Haberstroh. Absolutely crushing the game during the playoffs, particularly. Coming up next, On Target or On Something, NBA edition.
And the Jets with Darren Mucci as GM feel like they are figuring it out. Now, can Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, stay out of the way and let this thing progress? Does Aaron Glenn actually have the goods as head coach? I don't know that, but I think Geno Smith was a really sound signing, and I really do think, dodging lightning bolts here, the Jets could surprise people this year and be a lot better than the team you've been watching the last 15 years during this historic playoff drought.
How did you feel about his 2025? Do you think the hype is justified? Is he your number one guy right now?
I would feel comfortable putting him as QB1 right now. What I saw from Arch down the stretch, I just think that a lot of people stopped watching Arch in October. It was like, this guy's not good. And they moved on.
They did.
And then we got to Florida. And then we got Tennessee. And we moved on and on and on. And he stacked games and he stacked games and he stacked games. I was texting a Southwest scout and I was like, fill in the blank. Arch Manning has the best pocket movement skills since, and he said Joe Burrow.
Should AJ Bonsa be a lock for the number one pick going to the Washington Wizards? What do you think, Chad?
He's been my favorite player to watch really all year. I love what AJ brings to the table and the upside. I think he's got the combination of a can't miss scorer who could just ultimately be, one of the elite top 5 players in the NBA. And I just don't think the Wizards take the risk. To me, he's the clear number one guy.
Second down and 7, 5 to play. DeLorean launches, far boards, got a man deep in the end zone, caught, touchdown! The Orlando Pirates take a big shot and cash in.
It's only a matter of time before he had the one-on-one situation, and he got a chance to show off that blazing speed.
Nyquan Murray continues a massive night.
Victor Wembanyama whispered something to Mason Plumlee and Bismack Biyombo before they checked in for garbage time. I'm going to learn how to read today. Both players proceeded to give hard fouls to Jared McCain. We all saw it. We all realized what happened. And all of a sudden, it has raised all sorts of conspiracy theories. So now we have On Target or On Something. This is where we take a look at some of the week's boldest NBA takes and ask, is the analysis a bullseye or bull you-know-what? Or as my mom used to say, El Toro Poopy-Doo. So, Wemby being accused of ordering the code red on Jared McCain. On Target or On Something, code red against Jared McCabe.
On target, 100%. You think that's a coincidence? The guy who put an elbow in Naz Reid's throat? You think he's just playing nice and his teammates just coincidentally got all up on Jared McCabe? Of course not. It's absolutely what Wemby did. But honestly, Fitzy, I don't have a problem with it. This is the playoffs, baby. All is fair in love and war. As long as everybody is safe. As long as there's no, headhunting, essentially. As long as nobody gets hurt. This is the playoffs. Like, I'm cool with it. And I kind of love that we're seeing this side of Wemby.
I mean, are we surprised by that too? Like, I'm with you. This is totally on target. He definitely said, send him a little message, right? Like, because if there's anything we've
took it
learned,
personally.
Wemby's fired up about everything all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's the All-Star game or whether it's, the MVP or whether it's the presentation of the MVP or whether it's the way the game's going. Like, Wemby's fired up. He's just fired up as a person. Like, sometimes when it's a great athlete, we like to call that finding a chip on their shoulder. It's a nice way of saying, always being agitated. He's agitated. And the way I love this chip, by the way, and the way that all comes down. Like, 100% there's this like, hey, just send a little message. Just remind him there's still basketball left to be played. And certainly, at the very least, it's not the best look, but also it is the best look. And for anyone that has a problem with this, I would just say you can't be the same person that then constantly yells to me that you missed 90s basketball where everybody cared more about the game day in and day out. Like, this is what we expect. The level of physicality, the level of just vitriol between these two teams. This is what we need from the Spurs and OKC. I want this entire rivalry to get even more juice. I want more heat between these two teams, Caroline. If you're telling me, even if he came out and sat at the podium, which he would have to actually go to the podium to sit at, but if he sat at the podium post-game and said, yeah, I ordered a hit, I'm in on it. I want so much hatred between these two teams that we can plant the flag for destination viewing for the next 5 years.
I also think if you're a Spurs fan, you kind of love it because that's Bismack Biyombo and Mason Plumlee saying that's our guy. That we're not going to take any crap. That he's gonna say some things or do some things to our guy, to Wemby. Not on our watch. So that just shows also, I think, the respect that Wemby has in the locker room and how there's kind of this galvanizing factor of you mess with him and you mess with us. Because there might be some guys that are like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, we're not getting ourselves into trouble. We're not going to put a target on our backs for you. But no, they did that. Wemby had to whisper something in their ears and it was like, no questions asked. We got it. We got you. We've got your back.
Yeah, smack. Am I right? There we go. You like
Ooh,
that?
Nice.
Smack. Just smack. There we go. All right. Let's move to the next on target or on something. Anthony Edwards defending his decision to dap up the Spurs bench with 8 minutes to go in their elimination game in the second round. A lot of people seem to have a hard time with it. In a video on his YouTube channel, Ant said, in part, quote, I didn't want to dap them up at all, but then what would they be saying about me? It would have been a whole other conversation. I gave them the respect they deserve. That's why I'm me and y'all are whoever y'all are. So argument being in part that, particularly he didn't want to have to wait till after the game when they were celebrating and it was going to be a whole thing. So he just got it taken care of with 8 minutes left and they were getting their ass kicked. Are you buying this on target or on something?
On something, and they're on something strong. I hated this when it happened. Because what I love about Anthony Edwards is the fact that he DGAF, is the fact that Anthony Edwards is a competitor. He's got a chip on his shoulder about everything. You go over to the opposing sideline with 8 minutes left, not 8 seconds, 8 minutes left, and you want to play all kumbaya bestie pops with your opponents when you're getting your booties whooped? No, that doesn't sit right with me. And it was only made worse by what Anthony Edwards said, what you just read. I didn't want to dap them up. Well, then don't. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And to then all of a sudden turn it around on the media, the fans. That's why I'm me and y'all are whoever y'all are. No, that's deflecting. And that's not taking any responsibility for how bad of a look it was for what you did. If Anthony Edwards wants to get into the good graces of everyone, he can say, you know what, I realize now it was a bad look. I was trying to be a good sport about all of it, but I do understand that in that moment, I need to be with my team and my guys, and I need to be galvanizing the troops. Done. Over with. I would have a ton of respect if that's what he said. But instead, he's saying, no, I'm pretty much above everyone because I can justify what I did, and all of you peasants out there don't get it. I love Ant, hated this.
Yeah, the entire reply is on something. And this isn't just a basketball. This is for all sports. Imagine if we were sitting in an AFC playoff game and all of a sudden we watched Josh Allen go up and dap up the entire team that they were taking on with, I don't know, halfway through the fourth quarter when it's like, yeah, we're getting our ass kicked. Great game, guys. Really appreciate you guys. We're going to avoid the post-game line. Like, you just don't do that. And I realized what he's saying, that, hey, they've got to celebrate. It's all, chaos. You're Anthony Edwards. There is no chaos for you post-game. Other players look to find you post-game. You have a million coaches and security around you that help you navigate the crew and the crowd. You're going to be able to find anybody you want to find post-game. Yeah, it's not the best way. Like, it doesn't feel great in that situation. Yeah, you're eating a little bit of crow that you don't want to eat, and you just got your butt kicked. And I understand that all sucks, but that's just part of what you have to live through. How often do we see the images of somebody that sits on the sideline or the court afterwards while confetti falls for someone else, and we sit there and say, oh, man, he's soaking this feeling in so he never has to feel it again. He never wants to feel what a loss looks like. That's what we're used to. The concept of the opposite, yeah, there was like, midway through the fourth, and it's like, we're getting our asses kicked. Good game, y'all. We'll see you next time. Like, that's where you just have to understand that when you are Anthony Edwards, you're held to a standard. And it's not even a different standard. You're just held to a standard that most athletes are held to, and it's a particularly high one. That high standard of sportsmanship means that you got to get through that ass whooping. You got to wait till it's done, and then you got to say, good game, good series to everybody that you know and they know just kicked your butt. It doesn't feel good, but it's just part of the process. He's on something to try and justify it in any way, shape, or form. How about this one? All right, we'll keep going with some basketball here. Vegas Aces coach Becky Hammon. All right, Vegas Aces coach Becky Hammon has had plenty to say in her career, but I love this. She had a hot take about Jalen Brunson not being a number one superstar. All right, so her comment is essentially that he's too little. You can't be the A1 number one superstar when you're a little guy. Even when she was asked to double down on it, how she felt about it, she stood by her comments. I said what I said. If he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. We're going into the finals, so now everything has to be disrespect to the Knicks. On target or on something that Jalen Brunson, because of his size and the way he plays the game, cannot be that guy.
Well, I'm going to say Becky Hammon is on target. Not because I don't think Jalen Brunson is a superstar, because I do. Not because I don't think Jalen Brunson can carry the Knicks to a championship, although I wouldn't bet on it. I would say it's within the realm of possibility. I believe that he can do that. But I'm going to say that Becky Hammon is on target for a couple of reasons. One, she's standing on business. She said what she said. She doesn't have to walk it back because the Knicks brigade is in her Twitter mentions making her feel uncomfortable about it. The second reason is Becky Hammon coaches a 4-time MVP and 3-time WNBA champion. She is not impressed by you. She is not impressed by your NBA Cup MVP, Jalen Brunson. She has an incredibly high standard, and she should, because she won 3 championships, because she coaches the best player on the planet in Asia Wilson. So I'm going to say she's on target, not because I agree with her evaluation and sentiment, because I do think Jalen Brunson is a superstar, but I will say, Becky Hammon has more basketball knowledge in her pinky than I will ever have in my entire body. But I'm going to say she's on target because the woman's got standards, and she's going to need to see a little bit more than punching a ticket to the NBA Finals in order for her to walk her comments back.
Look, she's on target because I'm wildly scared of Becky Hammon. I was just going to be honest. Like, there are certain people that just have an intimidation factor. Like, the first time I ever interviewed Nick Saban, I sat there and I was like, oh, man, I had to, psych my... Nick Saban wasn't intimidating. I'm going to admit it. Even though he's a little grandpa and it just doesn't seem like I was very intimidated the first time. The first time I ever asked a question of Becky Hammon, I was a little intimidated. There's just something about Becky Hammon that I know my role. I know that she can kick my ass in almost anything. She's on target because she's Becky Hammon. I also think that she's on target because we're going to find out she's right. I continue to die on the hill that I don't believe the Knicks are going to win the NBA Finals, and I'm not even sure it's going to be that competitive of a series. I think that the winner of the West is going to run through the finals. I think that we're going to find out that the Knicks have been taking advantage of terrible opponents. I think we're going to see the Knicks come back. That doesn't mean it hasn't been a great season. It's magical. It's incredible. It's amazing. The Knicks are clearly the third best team in the NBA, but they're clearly the third best team in the NBA. I think we're going to find out that Becky Hammond was on target. Also, again, I'm not going to doubt her. We have some breaking news for you. Just in, massive, stunning news out of the French Open. Jannik Sinner, 1 game away from winning the match, started cramping and lost 19 of the final 21 games. Juan Manuel Cerundolo, cramping issues makes me wonder, Caroline, 90-degree temperatures here as we see Juan Manuel Cerundolo win this match. I wonder how much the heat we talked about yesterday began to play a part.
I think it definitely did. I mean, when we talk about cramping, it doesn't take, a master's degree to conclude that 90-degree temperatures can cause some cramping. You need to hydrate a ton, especially when you're out there for hours and hours and hours at a time. But I think that's an explanation, not an excuse. It's an explanation why Jannik Sinner is cramping. But he's not the only one that's playing out there in 90-degree temperatures. Juan Manuel Cerundolo is also playing in 90-degree temperatures. But his team, himself, his trainers, they did what they needed to do to make sure that he was able to and healthy enough to go out there and play in the temperatures that are, absolutely blistering out there in the French Open. So I do think it did play a part. But we talked yesterday with Dan Wolken about how Jannik Sinner, with no Carlos Alcaraz, was and should have been the overwhelming favorite to win this event. So while it is an explanation as to why he wasn't able to, I am not going to all of a sudden say that it excuses it. Because he is not the only one playing in these conditions.
Well, and your point is a valid one, because the fact is we sat there and we talked after talking to Dan about the heat and the impact the heat could have on this tournament. We talked about it because everybody's talking about the temperatures. And now what do we see? It looks like the heat becomes a factor. There are so many variables that go into training when you know that you're going to be playing in that kind of weather, when you know you're going to be playing in that kind of heat. There are things that you have to do for hydration. There are certain foods you eat at certain times. There's certain levels of potassium. There's all these different things that athletes take in advance of what they know is going to be a taxing event. You mentioned it yesterday. It's hours on the court, right? So you start cramping. Once you start cramping, it's hard to stop cramping. We see this all the time standing on the field at the Indoor Football League, for God's sake. Imagine what it's like being 90 degrees outside on the clay at the French Open, and you're asking your body to do this over and over and over again. The problem is once the cramping starts, you can't stop it. The other problem is you have to be ready for it. So to your point, Caroline, I think part of this, while it's a historic upset for Sinner to fall to somebody that is unranked at the beginning of the French Open, like this is a historic level upset, there is this moment of, I'm looking around saying, whether it's just on Sinner, whether it's on his team, whether it's on his trainers, whether it's on his water consumption, whether it's on his banana consumption, I don't know. But when you let yourself get to the point that cramps become the narrative of why you lost, at some point, everything in your process has to be examined, because you can't have gotten yourself to that place in the first place. It was anticipated. We all knew the heat was going to be a factor. So to your point, it can be a viable explanation, but it certainly can't be an excuse, and it shouldn't take away from what is an epic upset. We'll keep you updated on the French Open as that action continues. But coming up, we'll talk a little bit of college football with one of our favorites, friend of the show. We're going to continue to break it down. T-Bob Hebert going to join us next.
Are there any teams that come to mind, whether it's Brooklyn, whether it's Sacramento, or anybody else that you think has good incentive to try to move up in the draft?
If there was a team that I was looking at that had an asset, it's Milwaukee at 10 that might use Giannis to, for example, maybe try to get that 5th pick from the Clippers. That's the only team that I'm looking at right now that I say, okay, I think they've got the juice.
This is a team that is also doing it without some signature players in their rotation. Hunter Green, we have not seen him, but what Terry Francona and his staff are putting together right now. Sal Stewart is a Rookie of the Year candidate. Ellie De La Cruz is an MVP candidate. So, yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are a team that has some staying power in what is a very interesting and potentially compelling National League Central.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you can make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back one position.
Right across the street from where the Giants and the Jets play, we've got professional football indoor. The run-up in the left-footed kick is on the ground and picked up by an up man for the Rattlers. It's Ronnie Brown. Brown out across midfield and a great run down the boards to the end zone. Touchdown, Brown! What a start in the IFL Cup! Huge high hop, and he just absolutely had a nose for the end zone down the wall.
Exclusive to Yahoo Sports, Senators Ted Cruz and Maria Cantwell detail their groundbreaking legislation. They're talking about one-time transferring, 5-year eligibility, pro player ban, hard cap, 5% max agent fee, a Lane Kiffin rule, all this and much, much more. It's a lot to read. It's a 111-page bill. Ross Dellinger has written a great article on it. You can check out in Yahoo Sports. And now we welcome on former LSU offensive lineman, one of the best personalities in Wake Up Barstool, our friend of the show, T-Bob Hebert. All right, so the Lane Kiffin rule would prohibit coaches from leaving their team before the season end and would be enforced at the conference level. I got 2 LSU fans on this show. All right, people that know this. T-Bob, how are we feeling about the Lane Kiffin rule coming all the way from Congress?
I mean, I'm pretty indifferent. Hey, look, at this point, if you are an LSU fan, you have really only one path left to you, right? And this is something I think about a lot, and it is the paradox of choice. Think about when you sit down to watch a movie with the seemingly infinite streaming services that we have now. You can never decide on which movie to watch, right? You end up watching an hour of trailers. You never make a decision. You get nothing done. And you've wasted all the free time that you had. LSU fans have been forced into the villain role. You're cheering for Lane Kiffin, who everybody loves to hate. Everybody's for years loved to hate on Coach Mulkey. And now you have Will Wade, who's building the most unethical basketball team that has ever existed. So yeah, screw him. I don't give a damn. You want to be mad about it, Congress? You want to put in this Lane Kiffin rule? I don't care, because Lane Kiffin is already in the purple and gold. The program already seems to move in the right direction. And the hype and excitement is at an all-time high. Also, I have little to no faith that Congress can get anything done in any way. There's not a more feckless group of individuals maybe on the entire planet. So I have extreme doubts about whether or not this comes to pass.
I was actually talking to some Ole Miss fans about this, and they were like, well, you know, under this rule that Lane Kiffin wouldn't have been able to leave until after the college football playoff. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah, and
let's live in that fantasy world then. So cool. But he did.
Also, like,
go
Lane
ahead.
Kiffin's, I'm sorry, no, Caroline, like, Lane Kiffin's like one of the only coaches who would ever do that as well. So, like, it's a lot of hand-wringing and weeping and gnashing of teeth over, like, one of the biggest outlier decisions that we have ever seen in sports history.
Let's live in a world then where Lane Kiffin couldn't have left Ole Miss until after the college football playoff, that he did see it through and then he left for Baton Rouge after. Would Ole Miss have won a national championship last year?
I still don't think so. Look, Indiana was a wagon. Indiana continued to be a wagon. And now credit to Ole Miss. They got better and better and better. Trinidad Chambliss, what a revelation he was last year. I mean, to enter the season, not even as a starter, we spent an entire, this is what I love about sports in general, is that we pontificate, we hypothesize, but at the end of the day, you have to step on the field, you have to prove it. Like with Ole Miss last year, I spent an entire offseason hyping up Austin Simmons. Like, I think I had him on like my top 10 quarterback list. Oh, wait, he ended up not being any good. Trinidad Chambliss comes out of nowhere. This D2 guy, he just gets incredible by season's end. One of the best stories. And while Ole Miss was great and they way overperformed, I still don't believe that anybody was beating the Indiana Hoosiers last year, lane or no lane. So no, I don't think it, if anything, Ole Miss should be happy it went down like this because you won a playoff game with Pete Golding, which then becomes like at a time of your desperation when you're like upset and you're like, how can I make myself feel better? You're like, oh, well, we didn't need Lane to beat Georgia, so there you go.
So why is any of this Congress's business? I just keep thinking, T-Bob, like, realistically, you make content, we make content. We all make content under our own rules for different companies. Nobody comes in and says, well, you know what? We got to make sure that all of this is like, in what other business would Congress be coming in and saying, okay, it seems like there's some inequities in the way that this is going, so we're going to come up with the system that federally mandates the way college football is run?
So this is a fascinating question that very smart people could do multiple hours on. In my view, these are all extended ripple effects of having a system, which is the NCAA and college football, that, like Justice Kavanaugh wrote back in 2016 in the letter that has now become the thing that hangs over the NCAA's head in every single court case, the NCAA for over 100 years was a flatly anti-American, anti-capitalist, illegal system in which everybody could benefit off of the money being made except for the labor. And there was no great reason for it. Like, I mean, if you were a normal student, you could get paid in media and do these things, but you couldn't do if you were an athlete. It was just a complete fabricated hard cap to keep this amateurism tag in play. But what it led to was a shattering point, where eventually everybody's making so much money around the labor and the labor's not sniffing it that something had to give. And then we get back to kind of the original sins of Mark Emmert, where when he was in charge of the NCAA, instead of being forward thinking, instead of trying to head off the inevitability of change, instead of being innovative and creative, he chose to be reactive. And they chose to basically sit in their hands. And to me, I think this was their strategy. This is me kind of applying my view on it. It was like, okay, we got to keep amateurs in check. We cannot play these players. We don't have the money. Very funny how that worked out, right? We don't have money, whatever, all these sorts of things. Let's just sit in our hands and we'll let things get so chaotic and so lawless that eventually people are going to become so dissatisfied that somebody's going to have to enact some sort of rules, because what the NCAA needs is an antitrust exemption. And it's exactly what Justice Kavanaugh wrote in 2016 when he wrote, look, in any other sector of business, how the NCAA operates would be anti-American and flatly illegal. And that's why they cannot win a court case. And look, I made fun of Congress for being feckless, and that's a conversation that obviously goes way beyond this. But kind of one of the main issues is now you've created a situation where you have so many people that are benefiting off of the chaos, moneyed interests, players, agents, lawyers. Like, what you've done is you've created a system where so many people make money that they're really going to be calcified against any change going forward. I mean, already in Congress, you see the Black Caucus coming out against a lot of these rules. Why? Because it gives the power to limit wages. Like right now, if you're a player, this is great for you. You get to enter transfer portal every single semester, basically unlimited free agency. You get to leverage your play directly every single year. And so, yeah, I don't know how you put this toothpaste back in this tube. I'm not very hopeful that you can put this toothpaste back in this tube, although I think everybody desires more of a framework, a bit more guidelines. And in a perfect world, like I like a lot of these potential changes, in a perfect world, we could create a system where players are fairly compensated, but it's not as lawless, where there's more of an equal kind of setting for teams to operate on. But it's just, there's so many teams, so many players to play. I just don't know if that's possible.
Do we need this? Does college football need this?
I don't know. It's really, it's the, It's the impossible question to answer. Like as kind of part and parcel of this, I would point to something like the 2014 playoff. Nobody wants the 2014 playoff. Like not in a democratic sense. Like the people, boots on the ground, there are no fans, or at least not a majority, not even close to majority of fans, or really anybody, talking heads, that are saying they want a 2014 playoff. However, the special interests do. The coaches, the ADs, the schools, the television contracts, because they want more money and they want more job security in some cases. And the thing about it is, while nobody wants it, and while I don't want it at all, and I think it would feel terrible to have that many teams make the playoffs, and it would cheapen the regular season, all this sorts of stuff, I would watch. I would still watch. And that's kind of where they've got you over the barrel a little bit here, and kind of where I arrive at the answer that I don't know, because some of this stuff does turn me off. Like, I miss watching a roster develop over years. Like, and I'm especially feeling it now that I'm not covering just the LSU beat as like day in and day out that I was. Like, it's hard to keep up with who's who. It is really hard to keep up with who in the world is on your favorite team. And that takes away connectivity as a fan. But I'm still going to watch. And as long as we're still watching, they're still going to monetize our eyeballs. More money will be made. And ultimately, no change will be effective because we're not affecting the bottom line. So I guess from a brass tacks point of view, we don't need this. Although from maybe just me purely enjoying the sport point of view, and I have no money where the players make money. For me, it's really just all about the unlimited transfer portal. But yeah, from like my personal standpoint, I would like maybe a little bit of this so I can get to form relationships with these guys a bit more. But again, I'm going to watch either way, so I'm a sucker.
If something doesn't change, will the SEC eventually be left behind?
So this is what's interesting to me about the SEC's kind of threats of, look, we could break off. We could do this alone. Okay, let's think about that. If they were to break off, like at a very base level, it becomes a thing where, yeah, a lot of us would still watch, but it would lose a lot of national interest if this is just regional teams competing against one another. And yeah, being SEC champion would still be great, but you're not going to be recognized as national champion or anything like that. But I think the bigger question is, if the SEC were to break off, the reason would be they want more guidelines. They want more rules. And as we just alluded to, a lot of those rules and guidelines would be around capping player compensation, capping player mobility. Well, then why would the best players go there? If I stood to make less money in the SEC than I did going to the Big Ten, why would I go to the SEC? So yeah, you think right now that you have the brands and you're big enough where you could break off, but what you could see over time would be a talent drain where players like, why am I going to agree to a salary cap when I can go over here and I'm uncapped? Like, so I think all these threats by the SEC of secession, they ring a bit hollow to me.
Yeah, well, and not to mention, go ahead.
Before we get you out of here, I mean, there's 3 LSU helmets in the frame, so I can't get you out of here before waxing poetic on our favorite team in the world. I am so excited for.
There you go.
Cameras are hard. I'm so excited for the Lane Kiffin experience. All the money that LSU's invested, the transfer portal class, Sam Levitt coming in. But I'm also terrified, T, because I have witnessed every Lane Kiffin experience going back to his time at Tennessee. How do you feel as a total and complete LSU fan? Put your purple and gold tinted glasses on.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this year in LSU football?
I think it's okay. So I would say this. I would think first, in terms of like the Lane Kiffin aspect, I don't really care long. Like you got to know who you're sleeping with, right? I'm sure that the sex will be good. I'm not out here trying to form a long-term relationship. Now, admittedly, maybe it's so good that I end up kind of losing my better judgment and I catch feelings. And that's a bridge that we'll eventually cross when we have to get there. So like, I'm not worried about the Lane Kiffin experience long-term. I think offensively, they're going to be very exciting. It's going to be great. I think they'll win games. But this season one success is a bit more fascinating to me because the hype, is it outstripping the talent? Is it outstripping a team that was 3-5 in the SEC last year and now you feel like has to go like at least 10-2, with a very tough schedule. There is no excuse. We've seen what Curt Cignetti did at Indiana. And although it is an outlier kind of statistically, it still becomes this example, this paragon of like, this is what you can do in modern college football. And when we're giving you $40 million to form a roster and we paid you, $100 million to come here, this is what you must do year number one. And if it goes awry, if you have a somewhat more pedestrian year, because this is the first year of a turnaround, does some of that investment start to dry up? Because like what determines our temperature as fans are never the objective results themselves. It is where they land in relation to expectation. And so while LSU could have a better year next year and objectively what should be considered a good year, the expectation is so high that that then creates anger. And then you have an entire offseason of frustration and weeping and gnashing and then does that kind of poison the well? Does then it start to spiral out of control? I don't know. But if you're in the content game, Lane Kiffin is the gift that keeps on giving, as are the LSU Tigers. And I will always love them for that and always be excited to talk about them no matter what.
Go Tigers. And
hell yeah.
The minute you said content, we all perked up. Follow him on social media at TBOB53. Wake Up Barstool. T-Bob, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. I can't wait to watch this season. Good or bad, it's going to be electric. We got to have you back. We appreciate you.
Is this show 200? Did I hear that correctly? Am I making that up?
Yeah, it's show 200 for us. Yeah,
Did I just complete
it is number 200.
Let's go, guys. Congrats, guys. 200 shows. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Congrats. We're trying to play
200
catch
down,
up, dude.
2
Y'all have
million
y'all
to
have an
go. There
excellent
we go.
day.
Thank you so much, T-Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me,
T-Bob,
guys.
friend of the show. It's just great, dude. We love his insights. All right, coming up, we'll continue to break down some of the weirdest quotes you heard from SEC media the week. Coming up next.
Are there any teams that come to mind, whether it's Brooklyn, whether it's Sacramento, or anybody else that you think has good incentive to try to move up in the draft?
If there was a team that I was looking at that had an asset, it's Milwaukee at 10 that might use Giannis to, for example, maybe try to get that fifth pick from the Clippers. That's the only team that I'm looking at right now that I say, okay, I think they've got the juice.
This is a team that is also doing it without some signature players in their rotation. Hunter Green, we have not seen him, but what Terry Francona and his staff are putting together right now, Sal Stewart is a Rookie of the Year candidate. Ellie De La Cruz is an MVP candidate. So, yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are a team that has some staying power in what is a very interesting and potentially compelling National League Central.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you could make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back one position.
Right across the street from where the Giants and the Jets play, we've got professional football indoor. The run-up in the left-footed kick is on the ground and picked up by an up man for the Rattlers. It's Ronnie Brown. Brown out across midfield and a great run down the boards to the end zone. Touchdown, Brown! What a start in the IFL Cup! Huge high hop, and he just absolutely had a nose for the end zone down the wall.
Texas A&M head football coach Mike Elko on college football playoff expansion. What does Mike Elko want? I love that he went there. 40. Then I won't get fired. It's okay to make it hard to get to the playoffs. Having a little bit of sarcasm there in his quote is he wants 40 teams in because that makes it easier to not get fired. What do we think? I mean, I understand a little bit of his tone here. He's telling us he doesn't like how washed out it's getting. But Caroline, I also like the joke. I mean, 40 might be inevitable. Who knows?
40 might be inevitable, but nobody wants it. And we just talked with T-Bob Hebert, and he said, look, nobody wants 24 teams. That fans don't want 24 teams. If you polled 100 college football fans from across America, I would venture to guess more than 50, well, overwhelming more than 50%, say, no, we don't want 24. We don't even want 16. We didn't even want 12. 4 felt fine. 8 would have been a good expansion. Like, let's crawl before we walk instead of sprinting before we can run. So I like the way that Mike Elko kind of is like rubbing the absurdity of all of this in the faces of the decision makers of college football for 2 reasons. One, the absurdity of rapid expansion. The fact that we are 1 year into a 12-team playoff and we're already talking about 24. And so Mike Elko's like, yeah, why don't we just do 40? Hell, why don't we just do 100? Why don't we just make the entire college football season a college football playoff? Like, do we all realize how absurd that sounds? So I love that he's calling that out. I also love that he's calling out the absurdity of this playoff or bust mentality that so many of the major football programs have and football fans have with their programs. I went to one. It is playoff or bust at LSU. I think it's playoff or bust at Texas. I think it's playoff or bust at Missouri, a team that's never even made the college football playoff. You know, Ole Miss has gone once and had a great run last year, but now every single year it's going to be, well, if we don't make the playoff, it's a massive disappointment. So I'm glad that Mike Elko is kind of calling everything out and calling out the absurdity that has become not just the expectations in college football, because the expectations are absurd, but also the rapid expansion.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'd say is that fans don't really matter, like in any sport. NFL fans don't want international games, and they don't want teams with losing records getting home games in the playoffs. Hockey fans don't like the reseeding process of the playoffs that happened a few years ago. NCAA basketball fans don't want more teams in the tournament. The list goes on and on. Baseball fans didn't want a wild card. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money and TV, and that always rules. So let's take a look at some of the biggest quotes that we got, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. We're going to go SEC say what as we try and figure out who said it. Here's the quote. We'll go rapid fire. You want to talk about feeling like you've been drinking? That's like mixing tequila, bourbon, and beer all at the same time. What SEC coach do you think said it, Caroline?
Oh, if Sam Pittman was still in the league, I would say Sam Pittman 1000%. This is a good one. I'm gonna go Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri.
Oh, that's a good guess. I think that's a really good guess. John Summerall continues to be a coaching just quote machine. You want to talk about feeling like you've been drinking?
He is.
It's like mixing tequila, bourbon, and beer all at the same time. Summerall is a gift. Let's go to the next one. All right. 2 things can be right at the same time. I don't know. I say this all the time. 2 things can be true. I don't know. This feels like a sarcasm. Yeah. What do you think? Who is it?
But this feels like a measured take because I think it's true. 2 things can be right at the same time. I feel like Kirby has kind of adopted, since Nick Saban retired, has kind of adopted the role of, logical coach at the table. I'll go Kirby.
Okay. Who was
DeBoer?
It? Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin. I'm stunned by that because I thought for sure Lane was going to be the next quote. Now I got to figure out who the next quote is. The next quote, the CFP, is literally the last thing I've thought about since I took the job. I would have guessed that was Lane Kiffin, Caroline. That felt like just sort of the Lane Kiffin quote that I could count on here.
I think this has to come from a coach who has like 0 CFP expectations. I'm going to say Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State.
Now, what about Golish? Oh,
Golish.
I got it
nice.
Before.
Nice job,
That counts. I am counting that. All I was thinking about is like what program would be stupid enough to be asking their new coach about the playoffs before he'd even had the chance to really figure that out. That feels like Auburn. Like that is squarely right down the middle for the thing that we would see Auburn do in this process. Like, and I don't really know what to make like
I also don't
Auburn
buy this.
football in general. Yeah, no. You don't? You think he's obsessed with the playoffs?
I'm not obsessed with the playoff, but like if you say that you haven't thought of the college football playoff a single time since you took over a legacy football program with massive expectations, even though they have largely sucked over the last 5 years? Like, I think you're lying. I think it's the right thing to say but like, also, this is a results-based business. Alex Golesh knows that. It's the reason why he got the job at Auburn is because the results that he showed at South Florida. So I don't believe this, but I do think it's the right thing to say.
I also think this speaks to, we talked so much about the changes in college football. And one of the things that I feel like I'm yelling constantly is that the change that's really going to be felt the heaviest are for teams that feel like they should be national championship contenders, but just aren't. Like year in and year out, this version of Auburn's not going to be a national championship contender. And then you look at the way
Florida.
the SEC is stacked right now. Florida, yeah, you can look at the way the SEC is stacked right now, and you can look at all of this and say, man, for every single coach coming in, you better look, good for you. Get all that money. Get that fully guaranteed coaching contract because your fans' expectations don't match where you really are. Like Auburn should be in the new era of college football. Auburn is a team that if once every 5 years they make the college football playoff, it's not bad. And I know that Auburn fans don't want to hear that. That's not how they feel about it. But Caroline, that's who Auburn is.
I mean, Auburn, I don't even think is there right now. I think Auburn's just trying to get back to going to a bowl game consistently. But I agree with you. The history of Auburn football, the very historic and rich history of Auburn football, they should be way more in the college football playoff conversation. But Auburn's not even in the conversation of a top 5 team in the SEC. Auburn's not even in the conversation of being a top 10 team in the SEC. So I'm with you. I do think if Alex Golesh makes the college football playoff once every 3 to 5 years, that would be viewed as a success. That would be viewed for me as a success at LSU even. If you make the playoff 33% of the time, cool, I'll take that. But Auburn's not even close to being in that conversation. But I do think Alex Golesh can get them there.
I am more taking Auburn in the, oh my God, we made the playoffs this year. Auburn's like Michigan State. Every once in a while, they'll be like, oh my God, we made the playoffs this year. They'll get their ass kicked, and then they'll go back and recalibrate and go through that ride again. Like their one every 5 years is not a great one every 5 years. Speaking of greats, though, we'll talk to a great next. Tristan Thompson going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on all things NBA, his thoughts on LeBron, his thoughts on the Cavs. All of it coming up with Tristan Thompson next.
Are there any teams that come to mind, whether it's Brooklyn, whether it's Sacramento, or anybody else that you think has good incentive to try to move up in the draft?
If there was a team that I was looking at that had an asset, it's Milwaukee at 10 that might use Giannis to, for example, maybe try to get that 5th pick from the Clippers. That's the only team that I'm looking at right now that I say, okay, I think they've got the juice.
This is a team that is also doing it without some signature players in their rotation. Hunter Green, we have not seen him, but what Terry Francona and his staff are putting together right now, Sal Stewart is a Rookie of the Year candidate. L.A. De La Cruz is an MVP candidate. So, yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are a team that has some staying power in what is a very interesting and potentially compelling National League Central.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you could make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back 1 position.
Right across the street from where the Giants and the Jets play, we've got professional football indoor. The run-up in the left-footed kick is on the ground and picked up by an up man for the Rattlers. It's Ronnie Brown. Brown out across midfield and a great run down the boards to the end zone. Touchdown, Brown! What a start in the IFL Cup! Huge high hop, and he just absolutely had a nose for the end zone down the wall.
The two men you see here went to 4 straight NBA finals together, winning the whole damn thing 10 years ago. One of those men joins us now, Tristan Thompson. Tristan, we're super excited to talk to you, man. And it's crazy. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary from coming back down 3-1 to Golden State. When you think back on that series, what memory sticks with you the most now?
Oh, wow. Just remember when the horn went off and thinking about just the city of Cleveland, um, being drafted there, first season winning maybe 23 to 25 games. Hearing people think, is the Cleveland curse real 52 years and being able to break that streak and have Cleveland be a city of champions again, it was the most important thing to me.
What is your relationship like with those guys from that team? Like, do you still hang out? Is the group chat still going?
Of course, we actually have a trip coming up very soon. I got to shout out K Love for putting pen to paper and staying on this. But we have a group chat with a lot of the guys, me, Channing, Braun, JR, Swish, RJ. So we have a chat, but we're going to get together and go on a good golf trip. You see everyone practicing their golf swings. I've been doing it as well behind the scenes. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to come out there and hit it with a bang. So exciting.
How are we feeling about our golf game right now? I mean, golf. We're watching LeBron try and become a golfer extraordinaire. Where's your game at, Tristan?
Listen, I think I posted it not too long ago on social media when I was in St. Lucia on a golf course. So it's pretty good right now. I think the most important thing is like the accuracy and making sure it gets as close as to the greens as possible. It's not about the power and the distance, because I already accomplished that. It's about the accuracy now.
I mean, it doesn't matter if your golf swing is great or not. If you're golfing in St. Lucia, I think everything is going to be just fine. And I know LeBron has been big into golfing and golf on YouTube. Do you think that even though he has found all these other hobbies and has found some love with golfing, do you think he still has another year of basketball left in him?
Oh, definitely. I think, watching LeBron the last 25 games, him being able to go from, accepting being the third option to when Luka's hurt and AR gets hurt, stepping up and saying, okay, I'll go back to what my original role usually is, the number one option, and I'll lead this team to the second round. And what he was able to do against Houston, I mean, I kid you not, you guys watch the highlights or watch the game in game 3 and 4. He looks like the youngest player out there. He's jumping higher than everyone else, just as fast. So for him, golf is just another form of him to exit and just decompress. But I mean, realistically, he's still top 10 player in our game currently right now.
Is that future in Cleveland?
I've noticed like recently, every time when LeBron gets eliminated or is done in the playoffs, and if the Cavs are still playing, everyone tries to tie this whole synergy. Like, could he be going back to Cleveland? Could he not? I mean, I think if I'm him, I don't see a world why he'd want to take a discount. I think he's playing such at a high level where there's actually true value, and economically it has to make sense. But I know Cleveland fans would love to hope, but could it be a possibility? Maybe, but I don't see that. I think, purple and gold still looks good on him right now.
It's interesting to me, Tristan, when you know somebody and you're friends with somebody and you're teammates with somebody that's accomplished what LeBron has accomplished. We all have people we lean on. Who does somebody like LeBron that's basically ruled everything lean on for advice in situations like this?
I think you just continue leaning in the same support system. I think with Mav, Rich Paul, and Randy, they've done such a good job over his career to really, help put him in the best mindset or position where whatever decision he does decide to make, he always makes the right one. But also, he got our group chat. If he hits our group chat, says, guys, I'm gonna put up a toll and pull up a poll, and I'll give you 3 teams to pick from, and just click it, and I'll just go off your guys' idea. Hey, man, there's a lot of brilliant minds in there. It's it's me, Channing, JR, Kevin Love, Swish, Richard. I mean, it's not a bad group to have you pick your next destination.
That is 100% true. But what about you? What does your future look like? Do you want to come back and play?
I mean, I always still stay in the gym, stay ready. I think at the end of the day, the love for the game never goes away. The situation just has to make sense for myself and my family. But, for me right now, I'm still at peace. I'm at peace, whatever the chips may fall. I've been working on a lot of things off the court and venture and tech and robotics. I don't know if you guys seen all over social media. I made a quick splash with some of my investments I've made. So, life's been good.
You said, Tristan, it has to make sense, and that's a variable that's different for everybody. So when you say it has to make sense, what makes it make sense for you?
I think it's I love the fact that I'm able to be around my kids and have that daily routine with them. Being able to not, with playing NBA for so long, you miss a lot of key moments for them growing up, whether it's birthdays, whether it's school recitals, and my kids are getting older. Being able to be there for them and have those memories. So obviously, for me, living in Southern California is definitely ideal. But at the end of the day, the one area that gets exception and basically is home is Cleveland.
I mean, Southern California has a very nice and sunny place to live, but we do know that your heart is in Cleveland, that you bleed wine and gold, that you are so much a part of the culture of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Take me back to when you were watching that game 4 in the Eastern Conference Finals. What was going through your head?
I mean, it was tough. Listen, at the end of the day, you're right. Wine and gold runs through my bloodstream. Being drafted there, leaving after 9, 10 years, coming back and playing the next 2 years there. It was definitely tough. I think the fact that the Cavs looked a little tired and their legs got under them. Playing in 2 Game 7s, the first 2 series, I think that could play a toll on them. So it's definitely hard to see that, especially losing both games at home. But like I always tell guys, use this as motivation. Finish one step ahead. Last year was the conference semis. Now it's the conference finals. Everyone's got to try to get 1% better this summer and be better than how they left off.
Well, then I'm going to make you the team governor for the Cavs. Congratulations. With that comes the opportunity to figure out what this team looks like next year. So what would you do with Cleveland's roster going into next season?
Great question. Ooh, put my GM hat on, huh? Okay. I think right now we definitely have to figure out. I mean, believe James Harden's on a free agent, so we have to re-sign him. I think that the part of that trade with Darius Garland, we have to bring back James. I think James was really good for Don, especially adding another scorer, veteran, big size guard. Figure out Donovan, get a contract extension. And then really, I think it's just keep challenging Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to keep getting better. I think they're the 2 keys to unlock. When they're playing at a high level, the Cavs are a totally different team. And we got to play through them more. I think for Evan Mobley, I think we got to run the offense through him much more. I felt like last year we did, the year when we were number 1 seed in the East. I think this year we didn't do it as much and played him more as a pick and roll 5. And I think his strongest asset is having the ball in his hand and being mobile and active. He's kind of like a gazelle out there. So we got to take advantage of that and have him in the dribble handoffs, have him in the re-screen step-up pick and rolls, have him being the playmaker, very similar to Jokic and very similar to how they use Wemby right now. Those guys have those abilities to unlock so much more for our offense and let our shooters just shoot.
All right, but now I'm gonna at least present you a little Tetris. We all know that trading in the NBA is Tetris, but earlier Tom Haberstroh gave us a situation where it cost you Jared Allen and Evan Mobley through this whole process, but you end up with LeBron and Giannis on the Cavs in addition. Would you be making those sorts of moves if you ran the Cavs?
So you're asking me right now, would I give up Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in exchange for however you want to slice the cake and you get back Giannis and LeBron? Well, if the Cavs are going to win now mentality, then I could see that being a possibility. But for me, and seeing franchise, I mean, even look at the Miami Heat when LeBron left Miami. They went so heavy on win now that when LeBron, left, they had no youth behind them. And then unfortunately, Chris Bosh situation. So me personally, I think you have to keep one of them, even Evan or J.A., because they have enough youth. But I think at the end of the day, Evan Mobley is much younger than Jared Allen. So you do whatever you can to keep Evan Mobley and continue building around that, because a guy with his potential and ability, they don't walk through our door each and every day. And guys are, it's very hard to sign guys in free agent this time around with the CBA. So it'd be a tough one to pull the trigger, but we'll see what Dan does. That's why I'll be the GM and not the owner. Put it on Dan. That's me being the GM. And then now I give it to Dan. Like, Dan, what do you want to do? Win now or keep some future?
Smart man, for sure. Being the one with the final say is always a little of a scary position to be in. But I'm going to put you right back in that position of being the person with the final say. It looks like, Kobe Altman is coming back. It looks like Kenny Atkinson is coming back. And it looks like the Cavs are ready to run everything back. Is that the right decision?
Running it back with the exact same roster, I personally think you have to explore your options. I think at the end of the day, you have to make sure the head of the snake, which is Kenny and Don, they have to be back in whatever that looks like for Donovan in terms of an extension. And then from there, you build out. I think you got to keep Evan. You keep James. But I think there's a few pieces you got to explore. I love Max Strus and Sam Merrill. I think they need to be more involved in the offense because they make Evan and James's life much easier. And I think that's the key to how to make James in the pick and roll with Evan Mobley. How can we keep the spacing on the floor where it makes it much easier for them in the pick and roll dynamic? Because Donovan at the end of the day is a two guard, and he's going to figure it out how to get his game going. It's about figuring out those two guys, how to play them in tandem, which James and Evan, to surround them with the right pieces.
So you've mentioned James a few times. What's in your mind as a player? What's the fair way to cover somebody that's had so much success but hasn't necessarily had that success in the biggest moments in the playoffs?
Well, I think we give, a lot of people give James a hard time. I think with him not, whether they say he doesn't rise to the occasion or his numbers don't look great in the closeout games. But the reality is that, and I tell people, he's a 6'7" point guard that can see over guys, that can get guys in the offense, right? If we're looking for James Harden to lead the Cavs to a championship at this age, then that's unfair. That's unfair to him, right? I think we need to look at James Harden as, the point guard that's going to be the coach on the floor, get guys going. And when we need him to be a third option, that's what we need him to be, the third option scorer. We shouldn't be leaning on him to be the first and second because we have Donovan Evan to do that. That's their role. It's almost like with LeBron, right? You have Luka and you have AR, Bron's third, right? So, I think people need to kind of set the expectations that he's our point guard, our third scorer, and that's what we need to that should be the expectation.
Now, in hindsight, now that we have, a couple of months of a sample size and a postseason sample size of the James Harden experience in Cleveland, was the Garland for Harden deal a good one?
I think it was good for both sides. I think for Darius, I've had Darius since he's been a rookie. He's like a brother to me, extremely close. And I think, at some point in time, you have to know when, let's go our separate ways. I think for Darius, he has a great opportunity right now with the Clippers because the Clippers are in a situation right now, especially with Kawhi getting older, and they have to find this new youth. And I think Darius played extremely well for them second half of the season, brought great life. You watch the interviews, they say we haven't played this fast, it hasn't been this fun, because Darius is going to get the ball popping, he's going to share it. And especially in the West, how up and down it is, and with the young core that they have, I think Darius fits that mold better. And I think for the Cavs, with the more win now and, Don saying, I want to win, I don't want to keep losing in the second round, I think James, it worked better for both sides. So I think it was a win-win. And I'm happy for DG being able to, be the head of the snake and be the point guard for the future for the Clippers. And then for James, have an opportunity to potentially, this season get into the conference finals, and hopefully they can run it back, and, we'll see what happens.
Man, we could listen to you talk ball all day. I don't know if you want to do TV when this whole thing is said and done, but you should, man. I'm just saying, listening to you talk ball is infectious. It's amazing. We really appreciate you hanging out with us, Tristan. Thanks for sharing the memories. Thanks for sharing the insight. We'll hope to have you back on as this NBA season continues.
Of course, guys. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Definitely go continue
Tristan
TV.
Thompson.
Love it.
Yeah. There's no doubt. He was made for it. There's no doubt. Tristan Thompson made for TV. Follow him on Instagram at RealTristan13. You know where to find him. Coming up, the Kroenke Chronicles will tell you about it. Coming up next.
Rubido's going to have to stand in there. He's going to take a lot of big hits because they're going to give up pressure.
Fake handoff from the three, launches, got a man deep, caught, touchdown, New Mexico, Damon Street with the answer.
Let's watch, there's Rubido gets drilled and just I mean, poorly timed on the defensive play by So. I mean, or Decius. Decius jumps and the ball's not even there yet. But a great play, though, for New Mexico.
The UFC has just given me so much. And I've met so many great fans around the world, different states and things like that. And I'm just blessed. And like I said, I'm glass half full all the time. Even when things are not going my way, I find a way to look at the bright side. I'm just happy to be here, man. And one fight at a time, when it's all said and done, you know, I would love to have my last dance with the UFC.
What's that like for you as a weapon to see different coaches come in and figure out how to best utilize those weapons? What's that been like for you?
It's been great, you know, just working for guys like that now under Matt. They're just guys that like you want to play for. You get to see like how all of these great minds think. It's allowing me to learn, it's like keeping me on my toes and allowing me to just develop as a football player mentally.
Felix Harper, 7 of 11 in the first half. The efficiency has been the name of the game for him so far this season. Handoff left side, down the near boards, open space, and JT Stokes in for the touchdown for Fishers. And JT Stokes get a carry off the left side on the first play from scrimmage in the second half and houses it.
Stan Kroenke is seeking roughly $400 million from the city of Inglewood tied to improvements surrounding SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park, both areas that he owns. The city's pushing back, disputing both the 2015 development agreement and the reimbursement amount tied to public infrastructure because Stan Kroenke privately funded his stadium. But remember that while he privately funded his stadium, there were infrastructure agreements around that. You know, they need better lanes in and out, all the things that happen whenever you build stadiums. So he's now looking for $400 million just about a decade after he brought this stadium in. Caroline, you know Stan Kroenke's process as somebody from St. Louis that watched the Rams leave not once but twice. So what do you make of this?
I saw the Rams leave once. The first time was a little bit
heard
before
about
my
them
time.
Yeah.
Heard about them the other time. Yes. But I mean, when the Rams left to go to LA, like the most recent time in 2015, it hurt me to my core. We had season tickets to the Rams growing up. Every Sunday home game, I was there at Edward Jones Dome. Now, I remember a lot of the bad years of the St. Louis Rams, but still, St. Louis is a city based in sports and beer, but also sports. The Rams were such an important part of my childhood growing up and also my sports fandom. I do think that going to Rams games is a big reason why I have a passion to talk about sports to this day. So let me state for the record, I don't like Stan Kroenke. Everything he does and everything he says makes me roll my eyes. And this is one of them. That Stan Kroenke kind of feels like is out here almost threatening the state of California. Because I did hear this from the managing director of Kroenke's Hollywood Park, which is right around SoFi Stadium. Said, quote, if the city's agreements can now be revisited or undone after years of economic growth and community benefit, it raises fundamental questions about the reliability of doing business in Inglewood and California generally. I think that those are choice words. I think that that's a premeditated statement, essentially dangling the Rams over Los Angeles and the state of California. Essentially threatening the state of California that if we don't want to do business here anymore, if you don't give us what we're asking for, we might leave. And he's done it before. So who's to say that he won't do it again? And I think that's incredibly cowardly on behalf of Stan Kroenke. But look, he's not a billionaire. He's not a great businessman because he always is super respectful. No, I think business people are cutthroat all the time, not just Stan Kroenke and not just in sports. But I wonder what kind of leverage Stan Kroenke actually legitimately has in this situation. Stan Kroenke invested $5.5 billion private dollars, his own money, into SoFi Stadium. He's just going to leave that? He's going to leave that behind a decade later? What's he going to do? Move the team back to St. Louis and build a brand new stadium there? because Edward Jones Dome, it's pretty gross. It needs a lot of love. It needs a lot of TLC. So he's going to leave behind a $5.5 billion investment and invest what, $3 billion more in a new stadium elsewhere. So I understand that Stan Kroenke is flexing the muscle that he has, that it's worked for him in the past of threatening to leave a city because he's done it in the past. I just don't know how much leverage he really has when he has a massive investment sitting in Inglewood, California.
Well, the hard part about that is I think the opposite in his mind is, what is LA going to do? One of the things that absolutely devastates areas is empty real estate that can't easily be bought and sold to other places. Stan Kroenke owns all of the real estate, not just SoFi, but the real estate directly around it. If he chooses to leave all of that abandoned, it becomes something that he can either just sit there and live with that land until that land appreciates to the point that he can sell it for gain, or he can threaten the city to basically leave a massive part of the city old and decrepit, falling apart. The crazy thing is that this is over $400 million. Now, I'm not great at math, so I had AI help me. According to the Google machine, Stan Kroenke's current net worth is $26.8 billion. So $400 million to him is 1.5%. That's the same as $150 to somebody that makes $100,000 a year. So $150 to $100,000 a year is where Stan Kroenke is willing to draw a line in the sand, because he is a billionaire businessman, because he is, according to Google, the third or fourth, depending on the report, wealthiest owner in the NFL. Because frankly, it only takes one. So to your point, Caroline, maybe this is all just smoke, and maybe he's just a bloviating gas bag that's turning around saying, do this or else. Or he's relying on the fact that there's going to be one city somewhere in America. And I don't know where that city is, but there's one. And this is where philosophically everybody always tells me cities should not pay for stadiums for billionaires. I agree with that. But the only way that we ever get to that point is if every major city in the world agrees to not give a billionaire something for free. And I don't think the rest of the world has that level of self-control. Whether it's bidding against another city, whether in America, whether it's bidding against a city in Canada, whether it's bidding against London and the possibility of franchises, Stan Kroenke will simply use the leverage of, if not you, someone else to basically lord over the heads of the city, because that's what every major sports owner does. And we want to sit and yell and scream, but I realize that we look at it and say, cities should never do this. Oakland still yells, how could a city give billions of dollars to Mark Davis to move the Raiders to Vegas? And the answer is, it's not really your business anymore. Vegas decided to do that, and they seem to be pretty happy with it. And it might not make sense to most people, but it makes sense to them. And as long as there's one city that it makes sense for, Stan Kroenke will always have leverage.
But I think that Stan Kroenke is also a very brilliant businessman. Now, I do agree with you that he has a bloviating gas bag. I think that's the right label to put on Stan Kroenke. In 2014, I just looked this up quickly. I looked up the 2014 NFL team valuations. In 2014, the St. Louis Rams were the 32nd most valuable team in the NFL. For those counting at home, that's last, worth $930 million. In 2025, the Rams were the second most valuable team in the NFL at $10.43 billion. That's more than a 10 times increase. So in the span of a decade, the Rams went from the 32nd, the least valuable team in the league, to the second most valuable team in the league. Part of that is Stan Kroenke's money. You just said he's the third or fourth most valuable person, most valuable owner in the NFL. But part of that, I also think, is market. Because the third most valuable team in the NFL is the Giants in New York. Fourth most valuable team, the Patriots in Boston. Fifth, 49ers in San Francisco. Sixth, Eagles in Philadelphia. Big time markets and big cities increase the value of football teams. So I also think Stan Kroenke acknowledges that LA, one of the biggest cities, not just in the United States, but in the world. That's where he wants to be doing business, not San Antonio, Texas. As much as I love my hometown, not St. Louis, Missouri, not the middle of BFE, Idaho. So I think both of these sides are playing hardball, because LA is saying, you're not going to leave us. You have all of this investment and we are valuable. But also Stan Kroenke is saying, give me my money.
It will be interesting to keep an eye on, and we will. We'll be back right here tomorrow, 9 a.m. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching Yahoo Sports Daily. Come back tomorrow.